Hello, and welcome to SALTO Digital Dialogues. We are up at session 16, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, and we have a lovely setup for you today. While people are still filing in, as usual, let's go through some of the basics of what it is that we do here. My name is Juha Toibol-Kiviniemi, and I represent SALTO Digital in this session. So some very common generic guidelines of where we are. So all the sessions are recorded, as you know, and recordings will be shared afterwards on YouTube. You who are watching live will not be able to turn on your camera and microphone on purpose, but you will be able to use, and we do really hope you use, the Q&A panel, which is on the upper side of your Teams application to ask questions from our guest speaker and myself. If your computer looks like the one in the picture, we obviously cannot do very much for smooth technical performance, but do make sure always that your Teams, no matter what platform you are using, is updated to the latest version. That's the recipe for the smoothest possible experience. Yeah. So we are here talking about digital transformation, obviously, and our main target group is digital contact points and other national agency staff. So that is the context we are coming from. Now, of course, these sessions are now open for basically anyone interested. So all of you outside the national agency circuit that is listening today, you are very welcome on board. We try to give new viewpoints in these sessions to digital transformation and how it can be applied in education, in youth work, and especially in the context of the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programs, which is our kind of playing field. Yeah. Now, finally, we really tend to focus on how technology and digital transformation is applied, not so much on the technology itself. There are other actors who are giving very insightful tutorials and how-tos on how a certain piece of technology can be used, but that is not our goal here. But if you do find the content relevant, please do share the recording afterwards with colleagues and friends or whomever might be interested. And finally, new topics are always welcome. This season until the end of the year is already fully booked, but we are certainly looking for new exciting topics to be covered in future sessions next year and beyond. So drop us an email at saltodigital@oph.fi and we can see where we can cover the topic that you suggested. Now it is my very pleasure to welcome on board our guest speaker, who is one of the absolute gems of the digital youth work scene in Europe and a long-time front-runner of developing new practice, but also really involved in looking at structures that exist beyond that practice. And of course, I'm a bit biased because I'm a huge proponent of STEAM education myself. So with those words, I would like to welcome Jen on board. Please.
Hi, Juha.
Hi, welcome on board.
Thank you. Okay, so I am about to talk to you about some ideas around the concept of playing with purpose, so exploring STEAM and creative technology education. So this is a subject I have had the great pleasure to have worked on for the last 15 years, so please bear with me as I introduce you to the essentials over the space of 20 minutes. And at the very minimum, it will hopefully pique your interest in the subject to start to get curious. So who am I? So I'll give you 2 points if you can say my job title in Irish at the end of this, Juha. So I am the Coordinator Confortiach Otul Ildonach for the GRETB. What that actually means is the Galway Roscommon Education and Training Board Local Creative Youth Partnership Coordinator. So I work across 2 counties in Ireland, as you can see here on the blue and in the maroon. So that is Galway and Roscommon, right out on the western front of Europe on the Atlantic Ocean. And we provide youth-led creative learning environments for children and young people who are seldom heard or in out-of-school settings. For example, young people from the travelling community in Ireland, young Roma, young people in rural areas such as Irish-speaking Gaeltacht areas, and also new arrivals or young people for whatever reason that are socially isolated. So we work based on the creative interests of these communities, and all of them haven't had or have told us that they have had an interest in creativity or some form of technology. So let's kick off on what. So what is STEAM? So you quite often hear the word STEM, which would mean science, technology, engineering, and math, but the A is in there for the arts as well. So STEAM learning environments are actually learning environments that foster innovation by integrating all 5 of these disciplines. And on that front, then, what is creative technology? So creative technology education integrates tech to enhance learning experiences across disciplines, and it can be used as a tool, as an activity, as content. So I want you to think about an art project that you're working on. And is there a way that it could be enhanced through technology? Or maybe think about a project and enhance it with art. So for example, I'm working on a creative project and I'm going to use a 3D printer to prototype this creative project into reality. Or maybe I'm working on an arts project like a dance program. I'm going to use something like projection mapping to enhance the dance program. So it integrates all of the disciplines into these technology enhanced learning environments. And I have seen it happen in formal education settings, non-formal and higher education settings as well. In particular, we have found it as an effective tool to elevate youth voice, especially for those that are seldom heard. So let me offer you an idea to ponder on. And we'll probably come back to this later. So all of you who are listening today and potentially in the future, imagine if all of our learning and education settings across Europe have a space for you to play with new technologies. An example of this, and it's one of my favorites actually, is a teacher recently that I spoke to was supported by a school principal to play with the idea of integrating STEM into the primary school education setting or the national school education setting. And the teacher purchased these cute little robots that you see here called Spheros. So you can have a look at them up on the URL there. And she tried out this small robot in the classroom, and they used him to learn how to code and to get an introduction to computer science. But then they added paint, and naturally young people got really excited about this, dipped their little robots in paint and started to code them across the classroom floor on large pieces of paper. And the result is you have this beautiful creative technology project and a wonderful painting here that you can see to the left of the robot. And on that note, introducing the concept of makerspaces. So let's play. So within a makerspace, you can have coding, 3D printing, laser cutting, soldering, but it could also be just a very welcoming space in a classroom setting. So you have like an arts project on the go or creation, and it can happen in libraries, schools, workplace environments, and third level environments as well. With various codes of conduct, my experience would be that makerspaces are only as strong as the curiosity and the creativity of the people that run them. So in my own work, the local creative youth partnership with the GRETB, we developed and supported a local library in an area of Galway City called Ballyban. And it has since developed into local women's crafts groups and STEAM programs with youth centres and youth organisations in the area, such as Froiga and the local Ballyban After School group. I recently spoke to the librarian there, and she had said that children who would never have otherwise come into the library or gotten the chance to engage with the library had started to engage in the library within these STEAM sessions. These environments, known as maker spaces, are a global movement, and they're driven by communities and maker culture. So there are many resources and support networks available, such as Fab Lab, which is born out of the MIT Media Labs, and Instructables, which is a kind of community-led network and community-led resource bank that's available online. So movements like Fab Lab and Instructables, they're movements, again, that are driven by curiosity and what's known as inquiry-based learning. So nationally in Ireland, we have a celebratory festival or a maker fair, and every year it's supported by what is known as Tides Éireann, so Research Ireland. It was known as the Science Foundation of Ireland's Discovery Fund. And from a systematic point of view, these types of community engagement incentives at a funding level can really activate local innovation and support community-driven STEAM and creative technology projects to happen. So why should we do this? There's a number of reasons, and I'm going to go through a few of them here today. So Battelle for Kids, which is a global kind of resource organization for education, worked with education experts, teachers, organizational leaders to develop the P21 partnership for framework for the vision for 21st century learning. And so it has here the 4 C's, which is critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. So remember them as the 4 C's. And the framework outlines the 4 C's, which are kind of core higher order thinking skills that are required for future thinking. We also have a digital education action plan, which we should all know about at this stage. So it has 2 big strategic priorities: to foster a high-performing digital education ecosystem and enhance digital skills and competencies for digital ages. Now that's broken down into various priorities, and I'd recommend everybody go and have a look at it on the website. But there's one that I'd like to outline, which is the need to have digitally competent and confident staff, and I'll probably come back to that towards the end of our talk. As well as that, why else should we do it? It is actually the rights of the child. So the United Nations Rights of the Child in Article 12 states the rights of all children to express views and the rights for those views to be given due weight. So to the left here, you can see the Lundy model, and that informs our own national participation framework in Ireland. And it provides us with a structure to allow young people's voices to be heard in all learning environments, with support from an organisation called Hub na Nóg, or Youth Hub. As well as that, Article 31 states that we shall respect and promote the right of the child to participate fully in cultural life, artistic life, and encourage the provision of appropriate and equal opportunities for cultural and artistic, recreational and leisure activity. So on that note, it is the right of all children to have access to creative spaces within their local community or area. And as well as that, we have the Winchester's University Centre for Real World Learning, who provided us a kind of a framework to be able to formally assess these creative projects. Here in Ireland, my own work is informed by an all-of-government programme called Creative Youth Plan, and it's an initiative by Creative Ireland, which works across all of our government departments. So the plan provides us a platform to give young people opportunity to engage in creativity in education or in out-of-school education settings. And I'm going to come back to this Winchester model here, because what it actually provides us as systematic funders or supporters of these initiatives is that we would, for example, support youth organizations or schools to complete their pre and post evaluation forms. And this then starts to prioritize the educators' thinking and consideration around this framework for the creative habits of mind. What do we want our young people or our young learners, or indeed our adult learners, to get out of engaging in these creative spaces or creative projects? So you can see here, imaginative, being inquisitive, persistent, collaborative, disciplined. These are, again, those kind of higher order thinking skills of why we should actually be engaging in this. So primary schools in particular, I would say, or national schools, they are historically quite good at creating learning environments and encouraging inquiry-based learning within their school settings. So an example here of a youth-led initiative, part of our national organisation that we have here in Ireland, which is Dream Space. they have a national showcase. They go to the primary schools across Ireland, and they support them to engage with sensors, motors, coding. And you can see here a wonderful picture of a project that was developed by young people in a local primary school. And it supported those young people to explore using sensors and circuitry, an alternative way to support inclusion within the ballot voting system in Ireland. So a lovely example of a creative technology project. So we're moving on to the how. So how, project-based learning and inquiry-based learning fosters collaboration and real-world problem solving. And any creative technology or STEAM education project can relate to one of the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17 here Sustainable Development Goals. Can we see technology in any one of them, or digital skills, or STEAM? Can we see creativity in any one? It's relevant to all 17. And picking a Sustainable Development Goal as even a way to work towards or to include creative technology is a really great way to start within a learning setting. So I'll bring you to a global initiative. So this is a BBC microbit here, and it's a microcomputer that you can code from your laptop. And they have a really great global initiative known as Do Your Bit. So what that does is, at a local kind of community level, it incentivizes people to start to learn to code, but with their outcome in mind of one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have here Dream Space again in Ireland, who are actually working with our national television station to provide the sort of training and resources for local schools to be able to get involved in these challenges like Do Your Bit, or to pick a theme for their challenges, and such as Code Green. As well as that, we have an organisation called Kinia here in Ireland, and they have a great initiative which allows a kind of a week-long celebration of young people's achievements. And this is for children that develop and enter projects for awards. They can do it in Irish, in their youth clubs, in their secondary school settings. And recently they've started to engage with a company called H2G, who developed these hydrogen-powered sprint cars. And I really love this quote from a young person, where they got to bring their sprint car up to the Google Foundry in Dublin for their Creative Tech Fest this year, and race these hydrogen-powered cars and test them out and see how they run, and if they were like, and so they could engage in practical hands-on experience. And that's what they really, really enjoyed. So any STEAM and creative technology initiatives, such as the sprint cars, can develop a space for young people to fail. So we're often worried about, in traditional learning environments, you see a picture here of a Screebot, the concept of, oh no, I'll do it wrong, or we might not get there in the end. So we need learning environments in maker spaces, in STEAM culture and creative technology culture, that allow us to fail, to iterate, and to try again. And I would pose to you the question of, why are we creating learning environments that are based on comparison when we live in a very interdependent society? So with that in mind, a little story here about the Screebot. I recently built the Screebot with my own little person, and at week 6, we managed to get him going. We had our remote control for him downloaded on an app, and we were coding him and getting him to move around, but he wasn't doing what we wanted him to do. So we would say go left, and the little Screebot would go right. And it was actually my 7-year-old that realized in the little micro computer on the top of the Screebot that we have put the sensors in the wrong place. So I think it's a really lovely example of, we tried, we got stuck in, we failed, he wouldn't work, but we're allowing that sort of iteration and try again space to be able to learn. So very briefly, I'll introduce a couple of key texts, and there are so many wonderful things written on these topics. So again, I'm scratching the surface here, but I've talked about the 4 C's, so I'm going to introduce the 4 P's, which is project, peers, passion, and play. So from a key text, which is Lifelong Kindergarten, by Dr. Mitch Resnick. He's based in MIT Labs, and Dr. Mitch Resnick and his team at MIT have developed things like Lego Mindstorms, Computer Clubhouse model, and even the Fab Lab Makerspace model that I kind of mentioned earlier on. So a minefield of resources and innovative ideas in the field of creative technology and creative thinking in education. They also offer us insight into like a framework, which is known as the creative learning spiral. So they put it forward as a model for developing effective learning environments that foster creativity, inspire the concept of playing with purpose. So if you're thinking of developing a creative technology project in any learning environment, do you have space within your process to allow somebody to imagine something, to actually create that thing they're imagining, to play with it and share it with peers, to reflect on it, and then maybe reimagine it and try it again? So a really important consideration for the how is the concept of creative confidence. So any STEAM or creative technology project is only as strong as the educator's confidence. And this isn't necessarily in digital competence, which is something in the digital action plan that is mentioned, but also the confidence to empower and to be able to leave space for failure and iteration and learning in a project cycle. So I just would ask your listeners to consider a time in your life when maybe someone told you that you're not ready or you're not techie or you're maybe not creative. These experiences can sometimes be very similar. And at some point, someone or something potentially knocked your confidence to be able to try new things or to learn from mistakes. And I'd ask you to reflect on as well the whole concept of not being techie or not being involved in technology, because actually I really love this quote here from one of Mitch Resnick's texts, which is the concept that computer pioneer Alan Kay actually likes to say that technology is anything that was invented after you were born. So the definition of technology maybe could be questioned within yourself as well. Examples of Irish initiatives working to respond to these gaps in confidence for educators are the Kinea social enterprise. So they have an amazing online learning academy, and that allows learners to jump on and educators to jump on and actually go through a self-directed learning process around some of these key kind of concepts of STEAM and robotics and smart energy. So as well as that, we have a national youth organisation called Foróige here in Ireland, one of our largest youth organisations, and they have developed a digital youth work team within their staff. And it's really exciting because they've broken it down into the concept of go build, go level up, go sonic, go virtual, and go safely. And these are essentially training and mentorship initiatives that allows staff who feel very curious and very confident in these areas to go and support other staff in youth work settings who maybe don't feel so confident. So they're passionate youth workers and educators. And as well at a European level, we have the wonderful tool for tectonic motions and learning that's happening in a couple of weeks over in Reykjavik with the organisation RANIS. So that's going to be, again, another really exciting example of bringing educators together and allowing them space to play and learn. So just within the Foróige Go, this is a lovely image here of Megan, who works very hard across the Western Front of Ireland as well, and is literally traveling from youth service to youth service with her Lego Mindstorms or her Lego robotics in a box to try to support and mentor educators around just giving it a go. As well as that, you have Aoife Lee, another woman in STEM or STEAM, and she is traveling across Ireland within the library settings, just trying to meet libraries where they're at. And you can see her here, there's a picture of her trying to create one of the largest human circuits possible. I'm not sure how far they got, but she's using something called a makey here, and it allows you to code and play with the concept of circuitry. So examples of fostering digital innovation at a European level from our own national agency here in Ireland, there are two new initiatives, big initiatives happening in the field of virtual reality. So these are really needed as well. So we have Foróige doing some exchange work with Humak University in Helsinki, as well as that Youth Work Ireland is working with TUS, which is our Technological University of Shannon, to develop youth-led inclusive spaces for young people in virtual reality settings. However, there's still a big gap, I think, in European makerspace-based projects. There are some examples of wonderful makerspaces happening, community-led and community-driven, but little is kind of underway in the field of makerspaces and STEAM education in the European programs. I could stand corrected, and I'm always on the search, but hopefully we'll start to see more, try it out and gain confidence into the future. So just to reflect on what we've talked about here, we've got STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, math, and it is an interdisciplinary approach to learning. We've got creative technology, which enhances technology projects using creativity, or the concept of creative projects being enhanced with technology. We've got maker spaces, which can be wonderful spaces, depending on your code of conduct, and they create a space for play. Why should we do this? Because of the 4 C's. So we've got creativity, communication, critical thinking, collaboration. It's also the rights of the child. And I would encourage everybody to have a read of Article 12 and Article 31. As well as that, we've got formal assessment, and we have a way of formally assessing the kind of higher order thinking skills that happen in these learning environments. How can we do it? So sustainable development goals, inquiry-based learning, allowing space for failure, project, peers, passion, play, the creative learning spiral, and just boosting people's confidence to give it a go. So I really like this quote from Jean Piaget, and he's written loads of amazing things around maker culture and the concepts of constructivism or constructionism. So he says that play is the answer to how anything new comes about. And I planted an idea at the start of this, and I'd like to just plant it again. And I'll leave you with the final reflection and idea and ask you to maybe consider strategies for integrating creativity in line with the EU digital transformation priorities, strategies to promote collaborative learning, critical thinking, and prepare children and young people for real-world challenges in a rapidly changing environment. So imagine a space in all education environments across Europe, and let's create space for play with purpose. And that's me. So thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Jen, for a really thought-provoking and engaging input. There's a lot to unpack here. Before we start the Q&A session, remember that the Q&A panel is still open. There are a bunch of questions already there, which is nice, but keep them coming if you have something on your mind at this point. I would maybe touch on first what you mentioned about structures in the end. I feel that Ireland and Galway in particular seem to have a very strong systemic approach to both STEAM education and digital youth work in general. Maybe very briefly, how has that come about? So how has that happened? And what do you think are the main benefits versus not having a systemic approach to things?
So with all creative movements, they usually come from community. So if you think about, traditional forms of dance or music, it usually comes from a kind of a ground up piece happening. So it could have been a group of passionate teachers or youth workers kind of saying, let's give this a go, and starting to present in different situations. Now, we're really lucky in Ireland as well to have very ambitious social enterprises and NGOs, but I would say that there's a way to go yet before this is actually embedded within our education system. So creativity and music is starting to become a lot more embedded within our education training boards, but there does need to be much more of a strategic approach across government to be able to support this really on the ground. Because although these training initiatives are there still needs to be a conversion piece. So there still needs to be some sort of support and mentorship there ongoing for teachers and youth workers to be able to ensure that this is open to every young person, no matter where they are. I would say advice for, depending on what country or what education system is where, I think the advice is to really, we really don't have a choice anymore. We have to look at this as a piece as a piece for young people to be able to ensure that our learning environments are equipping young people for the future with these kind of higher order thinking skills. We need to invest in these spaces and strategically invest in them. I don't think it's good enough for NGOs to be kind of scrabbling for funding on a year-to-year basis, and that is the reality. They're very hardworking, very passionate people, but from a governmental level, we need to really sing this from the rooftops. It needs better investment.
Yeah. Well, the next actually logical question then would be also in the Q&A panel. What do you feel is the best context for a makerspace? Because obviously, when you advocate for more makerspaces at one point, the question becomes, well, what is the setting? Where do we put them? I know that Luxembourg has a lot of makerspaces directly in educational institutions. Finland and Helsinki in particular has a lot of makerspaces in public libraries, so they're more of a generic service for the public. Some countries I know they have them in youth houses. So what do you think, and in your experience, is there a benefit over the others of a particular setting? How do you feel?
I think different settings for different reasons. So like one of my favorite makerspaces in the world is in Helsinki, the UD library that I'm sure you're a frequenter of, Juha. So it's so inspirational to go there and to see young people using all sorts of high-tech equipment and laser cutters, and there's gaming rooms and high quality studios, and people are getting really trained and supported to be able to access this just with your library card. So it's very much open to everybody. I think libraries are key, but again, they need more strategic investment. It can't just be on the librarians to be expected, oh, now you'll just facilitate this. So there is a scariness to that. You've been trained as a librarian, not as a tech, a digital youth work expert or a makerspace mentor. So the investment UDI has placed on the library there is really inspirational to see, because you've got mentors there that can support members of the public to engage in machinery. Having said that, I think at the same time, a school can invest in creating a makerspace for young people. It doesn't have to have the laser cutters that the library in Helsinki does, but it could have some spheros in the corner, some paints, some arts materials. And I think the main thing is that it has that maker culture and that code of conduct around playing and trying and failing and iterating again, and it facilitates that creative learning spiral. As well as that, I really do think that there's a need in all work environments that involve education. So we would have worked quite hard in the Galway Roscommon Education Training Board to create a music studio and a rehearsal space around one of our music programs, Music Generation. I do feel like we need that sort of creative lab space for digital elements and robotics and coding and STEAM education as well.
Yeah. What I really loved in Luxembourg was the fact that they have the makerspaces in the educational institutions, but within those institutions, the makerspaces are actually run by the youth services, which is like a really cool collaboration. And that kind of works as a segue into the next question, which is that it could be argued that STEAM and maker activities have a strong possibility of further linking the youth sector to education and training sectors and vice versa. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, and I've seen that happen in a really lovely way, and that after school settings can creep into formal education settings, and again, Feroig, our national youth organization, would have been really good at this sort of integration piece of it. They work in after school settings, they create maker spaces in local communities, they're supported by national initiatives to come in and continuously reiterate and make these local community maker spaces better. But then schools can travel to these maker spaces, or teachers to get inspired to develop this kind of environment in the classroom as well. And that teacher actually that I spoke about with the Sphero robot and the painting, and she had contacted University of Limerick and gotten in touch with their Fab Lab that they've set up, and just gotten so much inspiration, was hungry for just trying things and learning things. And I think these creative initiatives support that sort of cross collaboration in all of the education settings. And that's what needs to happen, because no one person can become an expert in this. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. I know this is a bit particular to the Irish educational sectors as well, this collaboration also with companies. I feel like, especially when I compare with the Finnish sectors, there is a much more kind of natural tendency to or opportunity to collaborate with companies. And there is a question in the Q&A that you mentioned earlier, that in Ireland you work with Dreamspace, and I could not help but notice that the webpage refers to Microsoft. Can you tell us a bit more about your collaboration with Dreamspace? Is it part of Microsoft, or what role do they play? And is this only for private schools or something embedded in the public school?
Kind of pedagogical experts, I would say. And Dreamspace is a location that's within the Microsoft company. So I'd highly recommend, I think the URL is on the it's on the slides, to go and have a look at Microsoft Dreamspace, but they're also developing European initiatives as well. And they're open to working in after school settings. And I think it's just that openness that they have. We are lucky in Ireland to have the likes of Google for Education and Microsoft here, who are investing as well. And they are allowing that innovation to happen in the education sectors. But then it is for us to then look to the government as well of, okay, but what happens when the kind of initial philanthropic funding runs out? And so we're going to train 2,000 young people how to code, and then how do we sustain that within our education structure? So I do think we need to start looking at it from a systematic point of view as well as obviously supporting private initiatives to invest as well.
Yeah. We have two more questions. Pivoting to the actual young people that are engaging with the activities, there's a question that we know that STEAM tends to attract more boys than girls. How do you work with addressing that? And do you have any advice or suggestions, or how one can make STEAM more attractive to both genders? How can we get more girls interested in this? And this is, of course, directly linked into the Digital Education Action Plan as well, where there is a particular action based on getting more women and girls involved in STEM.
I think the creativity piece is really key here. So like I used the example of creative technology projects earlier on, where you have a dance program that's enhanced using projection mapping. I remember a story, actually, it was maybe yourself and Suvi once in Helsinki told me about this project with young people who were really into the horse racing, and they wanted to decorate these kind of toy horses that they were racing. So these were young girls really interested in this. So they started to use things like LED lights and circuitry to decorate their horses. We've also seen training initiatives come from Kenya around EL wire, which is a kind of a decorative wire that you can sew into clothing. But that's not to say that all girls are into dance or clothing, because at the same time, you know, I'm engaging my own little girl into this world, and I'm not doing it by saying, let's sit down and do some coding and robotics. I'm doing it by, let's create our own micro pet out of a microbit, or let's see if we can get our Squeebot to race around the room, or let's see if we can. So I think all children, no matter their gender, are interested in play, and they don't see the difference in learning environments. So you know, Lego is a great example of that, and they've always been champions of that sort of, Lego is not for girls or for boys, it's for everyone, no matter what their gender identity is. So I think that's really, really important.
I can echo that with my own example. I met once a girl in Luxembourg at a maker fair, and she was, I remember asking her, she was, I think, 13, spoke perfect English, and she was telling me about how she was part of a team that competed in an international Lego robot league. And she explained how Originally, it had been framed as a technology thing, come to learn programming, blah, blah, blah. She was kind of like, I don't know if I'm interested in that. But she tried it anyway, and she stayed for the experiences and for the friends. So she and her friend that was there, they told me, or they spoke to me a couple of minutes about the actual robots that were on display, and they talked to me 10 minutes in perfect English to a complete stranger adult man in this event, very confidently about all the experiences, all the connections they've made to other teams in the US, and I think Kenya was one team in their friends as well. So really effective kind of ways of exploring these topics as well.
Yeah, and the sustainable development goals as well, if you were to look at any one of them, you know, they don't have gender bias in them. It's stuff that's relevant to all of us, and no matter our age group or our gender. And I think if you're approaching a STEAM education project or creative technology project with those outcomes in mind, like how can we combat climate change, you know, let's use a microcomputer and see what we can come up with. And there are creative processes and design thinking processes that you can bring young people through. All of that just kind of goes out the window because you're all working towards a goal. And yeah, there's so many exciting initiatives. I think the main thing from this talk is to really introduce the core pieces and to just really say to everyone to get curious about it, start looking up STEAM projects, maker culture. There's such a strong community at a global level, and I'm sure nationally, like for example, for the Fab Labs, when I was researching them just for this talk as well, I was like, I wonder have they reached Ireland yet? There's about 8 or 9 of them community-led being set up across the country. And, you know, these exciting initiatives are because people are passionate about the subject and they really want to do this as a hobby, or they want to do it as a kind of a lifelong learning project. So I think it's really important that we just create the space for it.
Yeah. I know we could go on for another hour, but we are almost out of time here. Final question, connecting back to the European programs. So regarding maker movement and digital fabrication and STEAM, what could be the higher level reasons we should endorse and advocate for so that this sort of actions and activities would happen more in Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps projects? What would be your calls to action here?
I think the key calls to action, especially for national agencies who are trying to promote organizations, again, to gain the confidence to be able to do this. So something like the Tool Fair over in Reykjavik in a couple of weeks is a really lovely example of creating a space for inspiration first. So try to inspire people and support and mentor people. And that image as well of Megan traveling the length and breadth of the country, or Aoife trying to just say, try it, I promise it's not scary. And maybe to design your project and allow failure to be part of the project. So we're going to try to bring a group of young people and create a makerspace here to meet another group of young people in another European city to create a makerspace and cross collaborate. It might not go the way we planned, but try to put that into your process. Some of the core pieces I've introduced here was to kind of give those project design proposals a bit of structure. In the concept of the creative learning spiral is a really lovely way to start. And as well as those national initiatives are really important. So for a national agency to have a call, for example, for digital youth work projects or for STEAM education projects or maker culture projects, these will really support local community-driven innovation to happen, I think.
Thank you. That is everything we have time for, and I think we managed to exhaust what was in the Q&A panel as well. Thank you so much, Jen, for joining us, and thank you for your time.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
So next time, in about a month, we will be talking about impact assessment of digital youth work and digital education. So mark the date on your calendar, and if you are an NA representative, the call will be very soon in NA Connect Teams. That is all for this session. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for your time. See you online in the next. Bye-bye.